I received a desperate phone call from my mother after 11 years of silence. My father is dying and has one final wish: for me to come home and fund my twin sister Samantha's failing art gallery with $200,000. The same sister whose first art class was deemed more important than my college graduation 11 years ago. The same family who chose her dreams over my biggest achievement. Now, they need my money. I stare at my successful tech company office, remembering that devastating graduation day when my family seat sat completely empty. The morning of my graduation from UC Davis started like a dream. I woke up at 6 a.m. in my cramped apartment near campus stomach, churning with excitement and nervous energy. 4 years of grinding through computer science courses, working 3 part-time jobs to cover living expenses, and maintaining a 4.0 GPA had finally led to this moment. I was graduating summa cum laude, with a degree that already had a job offer waiting from a promising tech startup in Seattle. I remember texting my family group chat that morning. Ceremony starts at 10. Saved you seats in Section B, rows 15 through 17. Can't wait to see everyone. Growing up, I'd always been the responsible twin. While Samantha painted murals on her bedroom walls and convinced our parents to buy her expensive art supplies, I organized my school notebooks with color-coded tabs and set 3 different alarms to never miss an assignment deadline. Mom and Dad called me their little scholar, but somehow it always felt like a consolation prize compared to being their creative genius, like Samantha. Throughout high school, they attended every single one of Samantha's art competitions, driving hours to different cities for weekend exhibitions. Meanwhile, my academic decathlon victories and science fair awards received polite applause at the dinner table before conversation shifted back to Samantha's latest artistic breakthrough. When it came time for college applications, they spent thousands on professional portfolio development for her art school submissions, but told me I was smart enough to figure out the paperwork myself for academic scholarships. I earned that full scholarship to UC Davis through pure determination writing essays until my fingers cramped and studying for standardized tests until I could recite math formulas in my sleep. Every semester, I sent my parents my Dean's List certificates. They'd text back congratulations with a thumbs-up emoji before immediately asking if I'd seen Samantha's latest Instagram post about her sculpture class. The graduation ceremony was held in the university's main quad, decorated with blue and gold banners fluttering in the California breeze. Families began arriving early, claiming the best photo spots near the stage. I kept checking my phone, waiting for updates from my parents about traffic or parking. My stomach tightened as the clock approached 9:30, then 10, then 10:15. The dean began calling names alphabetically, and I watched classmate after classmate walk across that stage to thunderous applause from their families. I scanned the crowd, desperately looking for my mom's bright blonde hair, or my dad's familiar red baseball cap. The seats I'd reserved remained empty, creating an obvious gap in the otherwise packed auditorium. When they called Clarence Mitchell Thompson, I walked across that stage alone. The applause came from strangers and fellow graduates, polite but distant. I shook the dean's hand, accepted my diploma, and smiled for the photographer. But inside, I felt hollow. This was supposed to be the proudest moment of my life, the culmination of everything I'd worked for since elementary school. After the ceremony, I stood on the quad, watching families take pictures, laugh, and make plans for celebration dinners. My phone buzzed once with a text from my roommate's mom. "Congratulations, honey. You should be so proud." She'd remembered my graduation when my own family had forgotten. I finally called home that evening, hands shaking as I dialed. My mother answered on the 4th ring, sounding distracted and slightly out of breath. "Oh, Clarence, how did everything go today?" she asked, as if she genuinely didn't remember what day it was. "It was my graduation, Mom. You missed it." The silence stretched for several heartbeats before she sighed. "Sweetie, I'm so sorry. Samantha got accepted into this incredible intensive art program with Marcus Rodriguez. You know, the famous painter from San Francisco. He only takes 5 students per year, and today was the only day he could meet with her. We drove up there this morning for her first professional class. My chest felt like someone had reached inside and crushed my lungs. So you chose her art class over my college graduation? It's not like that, she said, her voice taking on that defensive tone I knew too well. You'll graduate again sometime, maybe for your master's degree or something. But this opportunity for Sam was once in a lifetime. Marcus Rodriguez has connections to galleries in New York and Los Angeles. This could change her entire career trajectory. I heard my father's voice in the background. Tell him we'll make it up to him. We'll take him out for a nice dinner when he visits home. Did Dad just say you'll make it up to me? I asked, my voice cracking despite my best efforts to stay calm. Your father just thinks you understand these things better than Samantha does. You're more mature, more independent. Samantha needs our support right now as she launches her artistic career. I hung up that night, feeling like I'd been sucker punched. But the real devastation came 3 days later, when I logged into Facebook and saw the photos. My family hadn't just attended Samantha's art class. They'd turned it into a weekend celebration at a luxury resort in Napa Valley. The pictures showed them laughing over wine tastings, posing in front of vineyard landscapes, and dining at restaurants I could never afford on my student budget. Samantha looked radiant in a flowing artistic dress, holding paintbrushes like they were magic wands. My parents beamed with pride in every single photo, their faces glowing with the kind of joy I desperately wanted to see in the graduation audience. The caption on my mother's post read, "Celebrating our daughter's acceptance into the Rodriguez Art Intensive. So proud of our creative genius." This is just the beginning of something amazing. 43 family, friends, and relatives liked the post and left congratulatory comments. Not one person had acknowledged my graduation because my parents hadn't bothered to mention it. I stared at those photos until my laptop screen blurred with tears. They hadn't simply forgotten my graduation or chosen something more important. They'd actively decided that celebrating Samantha's potential was worth more than acknowledging my actual achievement. They'd spent money on resort accommodations and fancy dinners to honor her first art class, while I sat alone in my apartment eating ramen noodles, wondering why 4 years of academic excellence couldn't earn me a single day of their pride. That night, I understood something that would shape the next 11 years of my life. I would never be enough for them. No matter how high I climbed, or how much I achieved, I would always be the secondary child, the one whose accomplishments paled in comparison to Samantha's artistic dreams. Moving to Seattle felt like escaping to another planet. The tech startup that hired me, Digital Fortress Security, occupied 3 floors of a sleek building overlooking Elliott Bay. My salary was more money than I'd ever imagined, having enough to rent a 1-bedroom apartment in Capitol Hill and actually buy groceries without checking my bank balance first. I threw myself into the work coding security systems for small businesses and learning from developers who'd been in the industry for decades. The company culture was intense but supportive. People celebrated wins together and stayed late to help solve complex problems. It felt like the opposite of my family dynamic, where one person's success seemed to diminish everyone else's worth. For the first few months, I kept expecting my parents to call. Maybe they'd apologize for missing graduation, or at least ask how I was adjusting to my new job and city. I'd see Seattle landmarks and think about describing them in letters home, or I'd solve a particularly challenging coding problem and imagine sharing the victory with people who were supposed to care about my life. Christmas came and went without a word from them. I'd sent gifts: a nice scarf for my mother, a book about California wines for my father, and an expensive set of professional-grade paintbrushes for Samantha. All 3 packages were returned to my apartment 2 weeks later with "Return to sender" stamped in red ink. No explanation, no acknowledgement that they'd even received them. Meanwhile, social media became a window into their ongoing celebration of Samantha's artistic journey. Every few days, new posts appeared showing her latest paintings, gallery openings for local artists she'd met through the Rodriguez program, or family trips to art museums in San Francisco and Los Angeles. My parents documented every brushstroke of her progress, while my existence might as well have been erased from their memory. I tried calling on my birthday in March. The phone rang 6 times before going to voicemail. I left a cheerful message about how work was going and mentioned I'd gotten a small promotion to senior developer. Nobody called back. In April, I sent my parents a copy of my first performance review, which included a 15% raise and recognition for designing a security protocol that saved the company $50,000 in the first quarter. I included a handwritten note explaining how proud I felt to be building something meaningful with my computer science degree. The letter was never acknowledged. By summer, I'd stopped checking their social media accounts daily, but I couldn't resist looking occasionally when I felt particularly lonely. The posts were always the same: Samantha at art fairs, Samantha meeting local gallery owners, my parents posing proudly next to her latest paintings. In one photo from July, I could see they'd converted my childhood bedroom into a studio space for her, with professional lighting equipment and easels where my desk and bookshelf used to be. The pain evolved from sharp and immediate to a dull, constant ache. I started seeing a therapist named Dr. Patricia Williams, a kind woman in her 50s, who specialized in family trauma. During our sessions, she helped me understand patterns I'd never recognized. "Your family operates on a scarcity model of love," she explained during one particularly difficult session. "They've convinced themselves that caring about one child's success means caring less about the others. It's not actually true, but it's the only way they know how to function." "But why is it always Samantha who gets the love?" I asked, struggling to keep my voice steady. "Because she's learned to demand it in ways that feel urgent and dramatic, while you've learned to be self-sufficient. Your parents probably tell themselves you don't need their attention because you're so capable of taking care of yourself." The therapy helped me understand the dysfunction, but it didn't make the rejection hurt less. I graduated from sessions focused on understanding my family to sessions focused on building a life that didn't depend on their validation. Work became my sanctuary. I led a team that developed security software for regional banks, working 60 and 70-hour weeks, not just because I loved the challenge, but because it kept my mind occupied with problems I could actually solve. My colleagues started inviting me to happy hours and weekend hiking trips. Slowly, I began building the chosen family Dr. Williams encouraged me to seek. I also discovered something that shocked me. I was really good at my job. Not just competent, but genuinely talented in ways that my computer science professors had recognized, but I'd never fully believed. By my second year at Digital Fortress, I was designing security systems that other companies tried to poach me to replicate. But even as my professional confidence grew, dating remained difficult. I'd meet women through work or friends, and everything would go well until they asked about my family. "How do you explain that your parents haven't spoken to you in 2 years because they were too busy celebrating your twin sister's art career to attend your college graduation?" Most people assumed I was exaggerating or leaving out important details that would make my family's behavior understandable. "Family is everything," one woman told me over dinner. "Whatever happened between you guys, you should swallow your pride and make the first move to reconcile. Life's too short to hold grudges." But it wasn't a grudge. It was self-preservation. Every time I considered reaching out, I remembered those photos from graduation weekend, my parents' glowing faces as they celebrated everything about Samantha, while erasing my existence entirely. The breaking point came in December of my 3rd year in Seattle. I was scrolling through Instagram when I saw a post that made my stomach drop. My parents had taken out a second mortgage on their house to fund Samantha's first solo art exhibition. The post showed professional photos of the gallery, opening elegant guests sipping wine, my sister looking sophisticated in a black dress, my parents beaming with pride as they stood next to paintings priced between $3,000 and $8,000. The caption read, "Sometimes you have to invest everything in your dreams. We're so proud to have supported Samantha's first major show. Every sacrifice was worth it to see her artistic vision come to life." I remembered being 17 and asking my parents if they could help with college application fees for safety schools. They'd told me that $200 was too much to spend on backup plans, and that I should focus my energy on the full scholarship, or figure out how to pay for college myself. Now they'd borrowed against their house, their retirement security, to throw a party for paintings that might never sell. That night, I deleted all my family members from social media. I blocked their phone numbers and email addresses. I changed my emergency contacts at work to Dr. Williams and my closest friend Marcus, a fellow developer who'd become like a brother to me. If they wanted to act like I didn't exist, I would give them exactly what they seemed to want. But this time, it would be my choice, not theirs. The third year in Seattle marked the beginning of everything changing. Digital Fortress promoted me to Chief Technology Officer when I was only 26, making me the youngest person to hold that position in the company's history. My security protocols had saved 3 major clients from cyber attacks, and word was spreading through the tech community about the young programmer who could predict and prevent digital threats before they happened. But the real turning point came at a tech conference in Portland, where I met Jennifer Walsh. She was presenting her own startup, a platform that connected freelance workers with small businesses, and her presentation was brilliant. She was confident without being arrogant, technical, without being intimidating, and she had this way of explaining complex ideas that made everyone in the room feel smarter just for listening. I approached her after the presentation, planning to discuss potential security partnerships between our companies. We ended up talking for 3 hours over coffee, then dinner, then walking around downtown Portland until midnight, discussing everything from coding philosophy to childhood dreams we'd abandoned and rediscovered. Jennifer understood ambition in a way my previous girlfriends hadn't. She'd grown up in a working-class family in Ohio and built her company from a business plan she'd written in her college dorm room. When I told her about my family situation, carefully over several weeks of dating, she didn't try to fix it or convince me to reconcile. "Some families are toxic," she said matter-of-factly. "You don't owe anyone a relationship just because you share DNA. The people who love you celebrate your successes instead of ignoring them." Jennifer's family embraced me immediately. Her parents, both teachers, were genuinely interested in my work and asked detailed questions about cybersecurity that showed they'd researched my industry before meeting me. Her younger brother, Mark, a college student studying engineering, treated me like a mentor and actually listened when I offered career advice. Their Thanksgiving dinner felt like something from a movie. Everyone talking over each other in the best possible way, sharing stories and inside jokes and making plans for the future. Jennifer's mom kept piling food on my plate, while her dad showed me old family photos and explained the history behind various traditions. I realized I'd never experienced unconditional acceptance like that, the feeling of being welcome simply for existing, rather than for achieving something impressive. By my 4th year in Seattle, I'd saved enough money to buy a small house in the Fremont neighborhood. It was a 1920s craftsman with original hardwood floors and a kitchen that needed updating, but it had a home office with perfect natural light for coding and a backyard where Jennifer and I could host barbecues for our friends. I sent a photo of the house keys to my parents' old phone number before remembering I'd blocked them. For about 5 minutes, I considered unblocking them to share this milestone. Then I remembered that they'd probably borrowed against their own house to fund another one of Samantha's art projects, and decided they'd forfeited the right to know about my life choices. Instead, I called Jennifer's parents. Her mom squealed with excitement and immediately started planning a housewarming party. Her dad offered to help with the kitchen renovation and spent the next weekend teaching me how to install new cabinet hardware. Their genuine enthusiasm felt better than any validation from my biological family could have. The startup world was exploding in Seattle, and I found myself consulting for other companies while still working full-time at Digital Fortress. I was designing security systems for everyone from local restaurants to medium-sized corporations, and the demand was growing faster than I could handle. Jennifer encouraged me to consider starting my own company. "You're already doing the work," she pointed out. "You might as well get paid what you're worth, instead of making other people rich with your ideas." Starting Sentinel Security Solutions was terrifying and exhilarating. I spent months researching business licenses, insurance requirements, and tax implications while building a client base through word-of-mouth referrals. My first official client was a regional bank that needed to upgrade their digital security after a data breach at a competitor. The contract was worth more money than I'd made in my entire first year at Digital Fortress. Jennifer and I got engaged on a hiking trip to Mount Rainier. I'd planned this elaborate proposal involving hidden photographers and a custom ring. But when we reached the summit and saw the view of the entire Pacific Northwest spread out below us, I couldn't wait for the perfect moment. I pulled out the ring box right there on the trail and asked her to marry me while we were both sweaty and exhausted and completely happy. "You're sure you want to marry someone whose family might show up at the wedding uninvited?" I asked, only half joking. "I'm marrying you," she said, kissing me. "Your family can stay in whatever fantasy world they've created. We'll build our own family, and it'll be better because we'll choose to love each other every single day." Our wedding was everything I'd never dared to hope for. Jennifer's family went overboard with decorations and speeches and dancing that lasted until 2 in the morning. My coworkers and college friends filled the seats where my family should have been, and nobody seemed to notice the absence because the people who were there were so genuinely excited to celebrate with us. I did check social media one time about a month after the wedding, just to see if my parents had somehow found out and cared enough to acknowledge it. Instead, I found posts about Samantha's latest gallery opening and my parents' vacation to New York to attend Art Basel. They were living their lives as if I'd never existed while I was building something beautiful, with people who actually wanted to be part of my story. Our son Daniel was born 3 years later, and holding him for the first time was like understanding love for the first time. Jennifer's parents flew in from Ohio to help with the first few weeks, bringing casseroles and baby clothes, and an endless supply of patience for midnight feedings and diaper emergencies. Watching them with Daniel, the way they'd sing to him and make silly faces just to see him smile, showed me what grandparent love was supposed to look like. By Daniel's first birthday, Sentinel Security had 15 employees and contracts with Fortune 500 companies across the West Coast. We'd moved to a bigger house in Queen Anne, with a yard where Daniel could learn to walk and eventually play soccer. Jennifer's business had grown to expanding into 3 additional cities and earning recognition from several tech industry publications. I'd achieved everything I'd dreamed about during those lonely college years: financial security, professional respect, a loving marriage, and a son who squealed with delight every time I walked in the door. I should have felt completely fulfilled. But late at night, when I was coding in my home office or checking Daniel's breathing while he slept, I sometimes wondered about my parents. Did they know they had a grandson? Did they ever think about the life they'd chosen to miss? Did Samantha ever ask about me? Jennifer caught me looking at Samantha's Instagram profile one evening. She'd never blocked me back, probably because she'd never noticed I existed enough to bother. The photos showed a beautiful woman in her early 30s, but something about her eyes looked hollow. Her recent posts were less frequent, and the galleries hosting her work looked smaller and less prestigious than the venues from her early 20s. "She doesn't look happy," Jennifer observed, glancing over my shoulder. "Maybe that's why they haven't reached out," I said. "Maybe they don't want me to see that their investment didn't pay off the way they planned." Jennifer closed my laptop and turned my chair to face her. "Or maybe they're exactly the same people they always were, and you've grown into someone they never deserved in the first place." That conversation happened on a Thursday evening in October. The following Tuesday, my phone rang with a call from a number I didn't recognize, but somehow knew I'd been waiting for my entire adult life. I was reviewing security protocols for a major client acquisition when my assistant knocked on my office door. Sentinel Security Solutions had grown to occupy 2 floors of a downtown Seattle building, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Puget Sound. My corner office reflected 8 years of building something from nothing: awards from industry organizations, photos with clients and employees, and a small gallery of Daniel's preschool artwork taped to the wall behind my desk. Clarence, there's a call holding on line 2, Sarah said, looking uncertain. The woman says she's your mother, but she sounds really upset. Should I take a message? My stomach dropped like I'd just stepped off a cliff. I hadn't heard from my family in over 8 years, not since I'd blocked their numbers and deleted them from social media. I'd built an entire life around their absence, convinced myself I was better off without people who could ignore me so completely. I'll take it. I managed my voice sounding strange to my own ears. Sarah closed the door behind her, and I stared at the blinking light on my phone system for several long moments before picking up the receiver. This is Clarence. Oh, thank God, came my mother's voice, but it was barely recognizable. Gone was the confident, dismissive tone I remembered. This woman sounded decades older, fragile, and desperate in a way that made my chest tighten with unexpected emotion. Clarence, I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I didn't know who else to call. I'd rehearsed this conversation 1,000 times in therapy and late-night discussions with Jennifer. I'd planned to be cold professional to make them feel the same dismissal they'd shown me. But hearing my mother cry, actually cry, dismantled every defensive strategy I'd prepared. What's wrong? I asked. It's your father, she said through tears. He has pancreatic cancer, stage 4. The doctors say he has maybe 3 weeks, possibly less. The words hit me like a physical blow. My father, who taught me to ride a bike and helped with math homework before Samantha's artistic needs consumed the family's attention, was dying. And I was hearing about it from a stranger's voice that happened to belong to my mother. I'm so sorry, I said, and meant it despite everything. How long have you known? 6 months, she admitted. He made me promise not to call you until the end. He said he didn't want your pity, but now he's changed his mind. He has a final wish, and it involves you. I closed my eyes, already knowing this wasn't going to be a simple request for reconciliation or forgiveness. My family had ignored my existence for 8 years. They wouldn't reach out now unless they needed something I could provide. What kind of final wish? He wants to see you one more time, she said quickly, as if she needed to get the words out before I could hang up. And he wants you to help your sister. Her art gallery is failing, Clarence. She's in serious financial trouble, and the stress is killing your father. He's convinced that if he dies, knowing Samantha might lose everything, he'll have failed as a father. There it was, the real reason for the call. How much money are we talking about? I asked, my business instincts kicking in despite the emotional chaos. $200,000 would save the gallery and pay off her debts, my mother said. I know it sounds like a lot, but your father researched your company online. We know you've done well for yourself. This money probably isn't a significant burden for someone with your success. I almost laughed at the audacity. They'd spent 8 years treating me like I didn't exist, missing every important milestone of my adult life. And now, they wanted me to write a check for more money than many people made in 3 years. All because Samantha's artistic dreams hadn't translated into financial reality. Have you considered that maybe Samantha needs to learn financial responsibility instead of being bailed out? I asked. This isn't about responsibility. My mother snapped, her voice taking on the defensive edge I remembered so well. This is about family loyalty. Your sister never had the advantages you did. She doesn't have your natural talent for making money. She needs our support to survive in a world that doesn't value creativity. What advantages did I have that she didn't? I asked, genuinely curious about how she'd rewritten history in her mind. You were always the practical one, the one who could take care of himself. Samantha is sensitive, artistic. She needs more guidance and support. Your father's dying wish is for you to take care of your sister the way family should. I thought about Jennifer and Daniel waiting for me at home, about the employees depending on my company's success, about the life I'd built, without any support from the people now asking for a small fortune. I'll think about it, I said finally. There's not much time to think, my mother pressed. Your father is getting weaker every day. Could you come home this weekend? even if you decide not to help with the money, seeing you might give him peace in his final days. Home. She said it like I still belonged there. Like the house where they'd converted my bedroom into Samantha's art studio was still a place I could return to. "I'll need to talk to my wife," I said. "Your wife?" The surprise in her voice was obvious. "You're married." "For 5 years," I said. "We have a 3-year-old son." The silence stretched for nearly 30 seconds. My mother was processing the fact that I'd gotten married and become a father without them knowing, let alone being invited to participate. "What's his name?" she asked quietly. "Daniel." "I'm a grandmother," she whispered, more to herself than to me. "Your father is a grandfather, and he doesn't even know." "You could have been part of his life," I said. "You could have been part of my life. But you made different choices." "We thought you didn't want anything to do with us," she said. "After graduation, you seemed so angry, so determined to cut us out. We figured you'd contact us when you were ready." I stared out my office window at the Seattle skyline, trying to process this revised version of our history. In her mind, I'd been the one who'd chosen estrangement. She'd apparently forgotten that they'd ignored my graduation, returned my Christmas gifts, and never responded to any of my attempts to maintain contact. "I have to go," I said. "I'll call you back tonight with my decision." "Clarence, wait. Your father really is dying. Whatever happened between us, he loves you. He's proud of what you've accomplished, even if we never said so. Please don't let him die thinking you hate him." The line went dead, and I sat in my office chair feeling like I'd been transported back to that graduation day, when I'd scanned the crowd looking for faces that were never going to appear. I called Jennifer immediately. "They want $200,000, I told her without preamble. "Of course they do," she said calmly. "Are you considering it?" "I don't know. My father is actually dying, Jen. This isn't manipulation. And part of me wonders if I'll regret not seeing him one last time." "What does your gut tell you?" I thought about that for several minutes. My gut tells me that Samantha has probably made poor financial decisions, and bailing her out won't teach her anything. But my gut also tells me that my father might genuinely want to make amends before he dies, and I might need that closure, even if I don't give them money. "Then let's go see him," Jennifer said. "But we set boundaries first. We take Daniel so they meet their grandson. We pay for our own hotel and transportation so we don't owe them anything. And we make no financial decisions while we're there. You can always send money later if you decide to, but you can't take it back once it's given." That evening, I called my mother back and told her we'd drive down to California that weekend. I didn't mention the money, and she didn't ask. But I could hear the relief in her voice when she gave me the address of the hospital where my father was receiving palliative care. As I hung up the phone, I realized I was about to introduce my son to grandparents who'd never even known he existed. I was about to see my twin sister for the first time in over a decade, and I was about to face my dying father with 8 years of hurt and success and growth that he'd chosen to miss. But first, I needed to do some research about Samantha's art gallery and exactly what kind of financial trouble they wanted me to solve. The drive from Seattle to Sacramento took 11 hours, giving me plenty of time to research exactly what kind of financial disaster I was being asked to fund. Jennifer handled most of the driving while I worked on my laptop, and Daniel napped in his car seat, blissfully unaware that he was about to meet family members who'd been absent from his entire existence. What I discovered about Samantha's gallery was worse than I'd expected. Artisan Dreams had opened 3 years earlier in a trendy district of downtown Sacramento, featuring local artists and hosting monthly exhibitions that attracted modest crowds. The initial investment had been substantial. My parents had indeed taken out a second mortgage, just as I'd seen on social media years earlier. But the gallery's financial records, which I accessed through business databases my company subscribed to, told a story of consistent losses. Monthly rent was $8,000 for a space that generated maybe $4,000 in revenue during good months. Samantha had no business training, no understanding of inventory turnover, or cash flow management, and apparently, no ability to price artwork realistically for her market. More concerning were the debt records. Samantha owed money to suppliers, artists, the landlord, and several credit card companies. The $200,000 my mother had mentioned wouldn't just save the gallery. It was probably a conservative estimate of what Samantha actually owed. She's been running a business like it's an expensive hobby. I told Jennifer, as we stopped for gas in Southern Oregon. This isn't a temporary cash flow problem. This is 3 years of fundamental misunderstanding about how businesses actually work. Are you surprised? Jennifer asked gently. I guess not. She's never had to face consequences for poor decisions. Why would she start now? We reached Sacramento at dinner time and checked into a hotel near the hospital. I'd booked 2 adjoining rooms so Daniel could nap while we visited my father, and so Jennifer and I could have private conversations about what we were seeing and feeling. The hospital was modern and sterile, with soft lighting designed to be comforting, but somehow making everything feel more surreal. My mother met us in the lobby, and I barely recognized her. She'd aged 20 years in the 8 since I'd seen her with gray hair and deep lines around her eyes that spoke of constant worry. "Clarence?" she whispered, touching my arm like she couldn't believe I was real. Then she noticed Jennifer and Daniel, and her face crumpled. "Oh my goodness, you brought them." Daniel hid behind my legs, confused by this stranger who was looking at him with such intense emotion. Jennifer stepped forward with her characteristic confidence and extended her hand. "Mrs. Thompson, I'm Jennifer. We're so sorry about your husband's illness." My mother took Jennifer's hand but couldn't stop staring at Daniel. He looks just like Clarence did at that age. Same dark hair, same serious eyes. "Can we see Dad?" I asked, needing to keep this moving before the emotion overwhelmed my ability to think clearly. My father's room was on the 4th floor, and the walk down that hallway felt endless. I prepared myself for seeing him weakened by illness, but the reality was still shocking. The man in the hospital bed was a shadow of the father I remembered, gaunt, pale, connected to machines that monitored his failing body. But his eyes were alert, and when he saw me walk through the door, they filled with tears. "Clarence," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "You came." "Of course I came," I said, moving to his bedside. "I'm so sorry you're going through this." He struggled to sit up straighter when he noticed Jennifer and Daniel. "Is this your family?" I introduced them, watching my father's face transform with wonder as Daniel cautiously approached the hospital bed. Within minutes, Daniel was chattering about his favorite trucks and showing my father pictures he'd drawn on the drive down. My father listened, like every word was precious, occasionally glancing at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Pure gratitude mixed with profound regret. "Can I talk to Clarence alone for a few minutes?" my father asked Jennifer. She took Daniel to the cafeteria, promising to bring back ice cream, and suddenly I was alone with my dying father for the first time in over a decade. "I messed up," he said without preamble. "With you, with our family, with everything that mattered. I let your mother convince me that you were strong enough to handle our neglect, while Samantha needed our constant attention and support." "Dad, you don't have to—" "Yes, I do," he interrupted, his voice gaining strength from urgency. "I have maybe 2 weeks left, and I need you to understand that missing your graduation wasn't just a mistake. It was a choice that revealed how poorly I understood what it means to be a father." I sat in the uncomfortable visitor's chair, listening to words I'd needed to hear for 8 years, but never expected to receive. "Your mother told me you own a successful company now, that you're married to a wonderful woman and have a son." He paused, breathing carefully. "I missed all of it, because I was so focused on trying to fix Samantha's problems that I forgot to celebrate your successes." "What's wrong with Samantha?" I asked. "Beyond the gallery failing, I mean." My father's face darkened. "She's been lying to us. The gallery isn't failing because of market conditions or lack of artistic talent. It's failing because Samantha has been stealing from it to fund gambling debts we didn't know about." The words hit me like a physical blow. Gambling. Poker primarily. Underground games with stakes she can't afford. She's been taking customer deposits, artist commission payments, even small amounts from our medical fund to pay what she owes to dangerous people. I stared at my father processing this information. How long have you known? 3 days, he said. Your mother found receipts and bank statements hidden in Samantha's apartment. We confronted her, and she broke down and confessed everything. The $200,000 isn't really for the gallery. It's to pay off gambling debts before someone gets hurt. And you want me to pay for her mistakes? No, my father said firmly. I want you to help me figure out how to save her without enabling her to destroy herself completely. I'm dying, Clarence. I won't be here to protect her from the consequences of her choices. But maybe you could help guide her toward getting real help. Before I could respond, the door opened and Samantha walked in. I hadn't seen my twin sister in person since the day I left for Seattle, and the years had changed her in ways that social media photos hadn't revealed. She was still beautiful, but there was a hardness around her eyes and a tension in her movements that spoke of constant stress and poor decisions. Clarence, she said, attempting a smile that didn't reach her eyes. You look good. Success suits you. Samantha, I replied neutrally. I'm sorry about Dad. She moved to the other side of his hospital bed, and for a moment, we stood there like bookends. The successful twin and the struggling twin, both trying to figure out how to relate to each other after years of separate lives. Mom told me you might be able to help with the gallery situation, Samantha said, cutting straight to the real reason for our reunion. I've been learning about your situation, I said carefully. It sounds more complicated than just business problems. Her face flushed, and she glanced at our father before looking back at me. Everyone makes mistakes. Some of us just need a little help getting back on track. I thought about my next words carefully. This conversation would set the tone for whatever relationship we might have going forward, and I could feel my father watching us both with desperate hope. I'm willing to listen, I said, but I need to understand exactly what kind of help you're asking for and what you're planning to do differently in the future. It wasn't a commitment to give her money, but it wasn't a refusal either. Samantha's shoulders relaxed slightly, and my father closed his eyes with what looked like relief. Thank you, he whispered. That's all I wanted, for you two to talk honestly with each other. But as I looked at my sister's face, I realized that honest conversation might reveal truths that would be harder to handle than our years of silence. The family dinner that evening was arranged at my mother's small apartment, a cramped two-bedroom place that was a dramatic downgrade from the spacious house I'd grown up in. The walls were covered with Samantha's artwork, paintings and sketches that showed genuine talent, but also revealed the chaotic mindset of someone who'd never learned discipline or business sense. Jennifer and I had debated whether to bring Daniel to this dinner, ultimately deciding that meeting his extended family was important, regardless of our adult complications. He charmed everyone immediately, as 3-year-olds tend to do, drawing pictures for his grandmother and asking innocent questions that broke the tension. Why does Grandpa live at the hospital? He asked my mother. Because he's very sick, sweetie, she explained. But seeing you makes him feel much better. Watching my mother with Daniel revealed glimpses of the loving parent she'd been when Samantha and I were young, before favoritism and enabling had corrupted her instincts. She listened to his stories about preschool and helped him color in a coloring book she'd bought specifically for his visit. Samantha arrived 40 minutes late, looking polished, but carrying herself with the careful precision of someone who'd had a few drinks before facing a difficult evening. She wore an expensive dress that didn't match her claims of financial desperation, and her purse was designer leather that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Sorry I'm late, she said, kissing my mother's cheek and avoiding eye contact with me. Traffic was terrible. During dinner, she performed the role of reformed struggling artist perfectly. She talked about her passion for supporting local artists, her vision for making art accessible to working-class communities, and her plans to expand the gallery if she could just get through this temporary financial difficulty. The problem is, That people don't understand the investment required to build a sustainable art business, she explained to Jennifer. It takes years to establish relationships with collectors and develop a reputation for quality curating. I was probably too ambitious too quickly, but my heart was in the right place. Jennifer nodded politely and asked thoughtful questions about the gallery's business model. I watched this interaction with growing unease, recognizing Samantha's charm offensive for what it was. A carefully rehearsed performance, designed to make her seem like a victim of circumstances, rather than the architect of her own problems. What's your plan for ensuring the gallery becomes profitable once you resolve the current debts? Jennifer asked. I've been working with a business consultant, Samantha said smoothly. We've identified several revenue streams I wasn't utilizing effectively. With the right financial foundation, I'm confident the gallery can become self-sustaining within 18 months. It was a beautiful lie delivered with the conviction of someone who'd practiced it extensively. I made a mental note to research whether this business consultant actually existed. After dinner, when Jennifer was helping my mother with dishes and Daniel was napping on the couch, Samantha suggested we take a walk around the neighborhood. I agreed, hoping a private conversation might reveal more honesty than her dinner performance. You don't believe me, she said as soon as we were outside. I think you believe what you're saying, I replied carefully. But I also think you're not telling the complete truth about what kind of trouble you're in. What has Dad told you? Enough to know that gambling debts aren't typically considered normal business expenses. Samantha stopped walking and turned to face me, her composed mask finally slipping. You don't understand the pressure I've been under. Everyone expected me to become this successful artist to justify all the investment and attention. When the gallery started struggling, I needed a way to make money quickly. So you started gambling? I started playing poker because I'm actually good at it. I won consistently for almost a year, enough to keep the gallery afloat without having to admit to Mom and Dad that their investment was failing. But then you started losing. Everyone loses sometimes, she said defensively. The problem is that I kept trying to win back what I'd lost, and the stakes kept getting higher. How much do you owe? She was quiet for several blocks before answering. About $350,000. I stopped walking. You told Mom it was $200,000. The $200,000 is what I need immediately to avoid getting hurt. The rest, I can probably negotiate or pay over time if I can just get current on the urgent debts. Samantha, do you understand how much money that is? Most people don't make $350,000 in their entire careers. You probably make that much in 6 months, she snapped. Don't lecture me about money when you've never had to struggle for anything. The accusation was so absurd that I almost laughed. I worked 3 jobs to get through college while you were taking private art lessons. I built my company from nothing while you were being handed gallery space funded by our parents' mortgage. How exactly have I never had to struggle? You're naturally good at making money, she said, echoing our mother's words from earlier. It's easy for you, because you understand business and technology. I'm an artist. I create beauty in the world, but that doesn't translate into financial success the way your skills do. I recognized the self-justification pattern that had probably enabled her gambling for months or years. In her mind, she was a victim of a system that undervalued creativity rather than someone who'd made consistently poor decisions and refused to accept responsibility for the consequences. Are you planning to keep gambling? I asked. Of course not, she said quickly. This whole experience has taught me that I'm not as good at it as I thought. I just need help getting out of the hole I've dug, and then I'll focus entirely on the gallery. What kind of help are you getting for the gambling problem? I don't have a gambling problem, she said, her voice becoming sharp. I have a debt problem caused by a period of poor judgment. Those are 2 different things. We walked in silence for another block while I processed what I was hearing. Samantha was asking for hundreds of thousands of dollars to solve a problem she refused to acknowledge was rooted in addiction and poor decision-making. She had no plan for changing the behaviors that had created this crisis, and she seemed to believe that my financial success obligated me to solve problems she'd created for herself. "I need to think about this," I said finally. "There's not much time to think," she said, stopping in front of a coffee shop and pulling out her phone. "Some of the people I owe money to aren't known for their patience." "Are you being threatened?" "Not yet, but these aren't the kind of debts you can just ignore indefinitely." I looked at my sister, this woman who shared my DNA but seemed like a complete stranger, and realized that helping her might require destroying the fantasy our parents had built around her artistic career and forcing her to face reality for the first time in her adult life. "I'll give you my answer tomorrow," I said. "But I want to see the gallery first, and I want to meet with your creditors personally." "Why?" "Because if I'm going to solve this problem, I want to understand exactly what I'm solving and whether you're committed to making sure it never happens again." Samantha's face went pale, but she nodded. "Fair enough." As we walked back toward my mother's apartment, I realized that the conversation I'd been dreading was actually the easiest part of this situation. The hard part would be deciding whether helping my sister meant giving her what she wanted or giving her what she actually needed. The next morning, I met Samantha at Artisan Dreams before the gallery opened to the public. The space was beautiful. High ceilings, polished concrete floors, professional lighting that made every painting look like a masterpiece. But walking through the gallery, with a business owner's eye, I could see the financial disaster lurking behind the artistic facade. The inventory was sparse with empty wall spaces that should have been filled with saleable artwork. The few pieces on display were priced optimistically, $5,000 for paintings by unknown local artists, when similar work sold for $500 at coffee shops across town. The storage area revealed boxes of unsold pieces from previous exhibitions, thousands of dollars in artwork that would probably never find buyers. "Show me the financial records," I said. Samantha reluctantly opened a laptop and pulled up spreadsheets that confirmed what I'd suspected. Monthly expenses averaged $12,000, while income rarely exceeded $3,000. She'd been funding the gap with credit cards loans from family, and increasingly money stolen from customer deposits and artist commission payments. "How much have you stolen from artists?" I asked. "It's not stealing," she said defensively. "It's borrowing with the intention to pay back once the gallery becomes profitable." "How much, Samantha?" "About $40,000, she admitted quietly. I thought about artists who'd trusted my sister with their work, who'd probably created pieces specifically for her exhibitions, who were now missing commission payments they'd earned and deserved. "I want to see bank statements for your personal accounts," I said. "Why?" "Because if you're asking me for hundreds of thousands of dollars, I need to understand where your money has actually gone." The bank statements told a story that was both predictable and infuriating. Large cash withdrawals every few days, always in amounts that suggested gambling stakes. Deposits that corresponded to gallery customer payments, followed immediately by withdrawals that had nothing to do with business expenses. A pattern of financial chaos that had been building for over 2 years. "You've been stealing from customers and artists to fund gambling for 2 years, I said. "This isn't a recent mistake or a temporary lapse in judgment. This is systematic theft." Samantha's composure finally cracked completely. "I was trying to save the gallery. Every time I lost money gambling, I told myself I'd win it back, and nobody would ever know. It was supposed to be temporary. But you kept losing more than you won, so you kept stealing more to try to win back what you'd stolen." "Yes," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "And now I owe money to people who will hurt me if I don't pay. And I've stolen from people who trusted me, and Dad is dying, thinking his daughter is a complete failure." For the first time in our conversation, she sounded genuinely remorseful, rather than just self-pitying. But remorse without accountability was just another form of manipulation. "What do you think should happen now?" I asked. "I think you should help me pay off the gambling debts and the money I borrowed from artists, and then I should close the gallery and get a regular job while I figure out how to rebuild my life. It was a reasonable answer, but I could hear the calculation behind it. She was telling me what she thought I wanted to hear, not necessarily what she actually planned to do. And if I don't help you? Her face hardened. Then people are going to get hurt, and artists are going to lose money they can't afford to lose, and Dad is going to die, knowing that his children couldn't figure out how to take care of each other. The guilt trip was expertly delivered, but I'd spent 8 years in therapy, learning to recognize emotional manipulation for what it was. Let me ask you a different question, I said. If someone else was in this situation, if one of your artist friends had stolen $40,000 from customers and owed $350,000 in gambling debts, what would you think the appropriate consequences should be? That's different, she said immediately. I didn't steal the money for drugs or luxury purchases. I was trying to save a business that employs people and supports the local arts community. But you did steal it, and you did gamble it away. The motivation doesn't change the actions or their impact on the people you hurt. I spent the rest of the morning visiting the gallery's creditors, the landlord, several suppliers, and 2 artists who'd been waiting months for commission payments on sold pieces. Each conversation confirmed what I'd suspected. Samantha had been lying to everyone, creating elaborate stories about delayed payments and temporary cash flow problems, while using their money to fund increasingly desperate gambling. The artist meetings were particularly heartbreaking. One woman, Sarah Martinez, had sold 3 paintings through the gallery 6 months earlier, but never received her commission payment of $4,000. She was a single mother who'd been counting on that money to cover her daughter's medical expenses. I kept calling and emailing, Sarah told me. Samantha always had an excuse. The customer's payment was delayed, or there was a problem with the bank transfer, or she was waiting for her business loan to be approved. I finally realized she was just stalling, and probably didn't have the money. What would happen if you got your commission payment this week? I asked. It would change everything, Sarah said, tearing up. I've been working extra shifts at a restaurant to try to make up the money, but it's been impossible to keep up with my daughter's treatment costs. That afternoon, I returned to the hospital to see my father. He was weaker than he'd been the day before, but still alert enough for serious conversation. I need to tell you what I've learned about Samantha's situation, I said. I laid out everything. The systematic theft, the gambling addiction she refused to acknowledge, the lies she'd told to creditors and family members. My father listened with growing horror as I described the scope of the financial and ethical disaster his daughter had created. She's sick, he said when I finished. This isn't just poor judgment. This is addiction and mental illness, and we enabled it by never making her face consequences for her actions. What do you think I should do? I think you should help her, but not the way she wants to be helped, he said. Don't give her money to continue avoiding responsibility. Give her the tools to rebuild her life the right way. That evening, I called a family meeting in my father's hospital room. Jennifer stayed with Daniel at the hotel, while my mother Samantha and I gathered around his bed for what we all knew might be one of his last opportunities to address our family's dysfunction. Clarence has something he wants to say, my father announced. I'd prepared for this moment all day, but sitting in that sterile room, looking at my dying father and desperate sister, the words still felt inadequate for the magnitude of what needed to be said. I'm not going to give you money to pay off gambling debts, I said to Samantha, but I am going to help you fix this situation the right way. What does that mean? My mother asked. It means I'm going to pay the $40,000 Samantha owes to artists whose commission payments she stole. They shouldn't suffer because of her poor choices, and they need that money to support their families. Thank you, Samantha said quickly. And the other debts? You're going to handle those yourself, but not the way you think, I continued. I've researched gambling addiction treatment centers, and there's an excellent 90-day residential program in Northern California that has a high success rate for people with your level of addiction. I don't have a gambling addiction, Samantha protested. I just made some poor decisions during a stressful period. The program costs $25,000, I said, ignoring her denial. I'll pay for that. I'll also pay for a lawyer to help you negotiate payment plans with your other creditors, and I'll cover the legal fees to properly close the gallery and transfer any remaining inventory to the artists who created it. What about the gambling debts? She asked. You'll work out payment plans for those yourself. The treatment center will help you develop a realistic budget based on income from a regular job. You'll probably be paying $50 or $100 a month for the next 20 years, but that's manageable if you're actually committed to changing your life. I can't do that, she said, panic creeping into her voice. Some of these people won't accept payment plans. They'll hurt me. Then you'll need to explore legal options like bankruptcy or working with law enforcement if you're being threatened, I said. But I won't enable your addiction by making your problems disappear without consequences. My mother looked stricken. Clarence, you have the money to solve this. Why are you willing to help strangers, the artists, but not your own sister? Because helping the artists is justice, I said. They earned that money and deserve to receive it. Helping Samantha avoid consequences for stealing and gambling isn't help. It's enabling behavior that will eventually destroy her. What if I refuse the treatment program? Samantha asked. Then you'll handle all of this completely on your own, I said. I won't give you a single dollar for any purpose, and you'll face whatever consequences result from the choices you've made. That's not fair, she said, tears starting again. You have everything. Money, success, a perfect family. I have nothing. I need help, not judgment. I'm offering help, I said gently. I'm offering to pay for treatment that could save your life, legal assistance to resolve your debts responsibly, and support to make sure the people you've hurt receive what they're owed. That's more help than most people in your situation ever get. My father reached out and took Samantha's hand. Your brother is offering you a chance to rebuild your life with integrity, he said. It's not the easy path, but it's the only path that leads to real recovery. What if I can't do it? She whispered. What if I'm not strong enough to change? Then you'll try again, I said. And if you're genuinely committed to recovery, I'll support you through the process. But I won't support continued gambling or stealing or lying to the people who love you. The room was quiet for several minutes while Samantha processed what I was offering and what I was refusing to provide. The treatment program starts when? She finally asked. I can have you enrolled by Monday if you agree to go. And you'll really pay for the artists to get their commissions? I'll transfer that money tomorrow. They've waited long enough. She looked at our father, who nodded encouragingly, then at our mother, who was clearly struggling with the idea that financial rescue wasn't the answer to Samantha's problems. Okay, Samantha said quietly. I'll try the treatment program. And if you complete the program successfully, I'll help you find a job in Seattle, I added. You can start over in a new city where nobody knows about your past mistakes, but you'll be close enough that we can rebuild our relationship while you're in recovery. It wasn't the fairy tale reconciliation my parents had probably hoped for, but it was honest. The first honest interaction our family had shared in over a decade. My father died 12 days later, peacefully, and with the knowledge that his children were finally talking to each other with truth instead of fantasy. Samantha completed the 90-day treatment program and moved to Seattle, where she now works as an administrative assistant at a non-profit arts organization. She attends gambling addiction meetings 3 times a week and has been clean for 8 months. My mother sold the remaining family assets to contribute to Samantha's debt repayment plan and moved to a small apartment near us in Seattle. She's learning to be a grandmother to Daniel without the favoritism that poisoned my childhood, and slowly building a relationship with Jennifer, based on mutual respect rather than obligation. The artists all received their commission payments, and several have stayed in touch to share updates about their work and gratitude for the unexpected resolution. Sarah Martinez used her $4,000 to cover her daughter's medical expenses and has since been accepted into a prestigious MFA program with full funding. Sentinel Security Solutions continues to grow, but I've learned to set boundaries that protect family time and personal relationships. Jennifer and I are expecting our second child, and Daniel is excited about becoming a big brother. My parents never got the chance to be involved in his early life, but my mother is making sure she doesn't miss any more milestones. The most important lesson from this whole experience came from my father during one of our last conversations. Real love sometimes requires saying no, he told me. I spent your entire childhood saying yes to everything Samantha wanted, and it nearly destroyed her. You saved her by being willing to let her face consequences. People ask me sometimes if I'm glad my family reached out after 8 years of silence. The honest answer is complicated. I'm grateful that my father and I reconciled before he died, and I'm proud of the relationship Samantha and I are slowly building, based on honesty rather than enablement. But I also know that those 8 years of building a life without them taught me invaluable lessons about self-worth, chosen family, and the difference between helping and rescuing. Daniel will grow up knowing his grandmother and aunt, but he'll also grow up understanding that love requires accountability, that family members who truly care about each other don't enable destructive behavior, and that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to solve someone else's problems for them. Real healing requires more than money. It requires courage to face truth, commitment to change destructive patterns, and the wisdom to know when helping becomes enabling. My family learned those lessons the hard way, but we learned them together, and that's made all the difference in building something genuine from the ruins of what we used to be. Have you ever had to choose between enabling someone you love or helping them face difficult consequences? How do you balance compassion with accountability when family members are struggling with addiction or poor decisions? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like and share it with someone who might benefit from hearing about the difference between helping and enabling. Subscribe for more stories about family dynamics, personal growth, and the complicated journey of building healthy relationships. Thank you for listening to this difficult, but ultimately hopeful chapter of my life. I hope it reminds you that it's never too late to choose truth over convenience, and that real love sometimes requires the courage to say no.